The N52 is the most hated naturally aspirated BMW engine ever made. Forums call it plastic garbage. YouTube comments say it ruined BMW. Mechanics say it's an overcomplicated nightmare. But here's the thing, almost everything you've been told about the N52 is wrong. This engine won Engine of the Year twice. It's lasted past 300,000 kilometers in cars all over the world. And it was the last naturally aspirated inline-six BMW ever made. The very thing enthusiasts now mourn? The N52 was the final one. So why does everyone hate it? And, more importantly, is the hate actually justified? To understand why the N52 exists, you need to understand the corner BMW was backed into by 2003. Euro 4 emissions standards were coming in 2005. The NOx limits were set at 80 milligrams per kilometer. And the M54, with its high compression, naturally aspirated design, was struggling to comply. BMW could have done what everyone else eventually did, slap a turbocharger on it and call it a day. Lower compression, add boost, NOx problems solved. But BMW's engineering leadership made a bold decision. They were going to save natural aspiration. They believed the naturally aspirated inline-six was fundamental to the BMW driving experience. The linear power delivery, the throttle response, the sound. They weren't ready to give that up. Not yet. So the brief for the N52 was essentially this. Make an engine that's lighter than the M54, makes the same power or more, uses less fuel, produces fewer emissions, and does all of this while keeping the naturally aspirated character that BMW customers expect. Oh, and one more thing. Do it on a budget. BMW was still recovering from the Rover disaster that had nearly bankrupted the company. This wasn't just difficult, this was borderline impossible. And what BMW's engineers created to solve it was genuinely remarkable, even if nobody wants to admit it. Let's start with the single most controversial decision BMW made with the N52. The engine block. You see, the M54 used an aluminium block with cast iron cylinder liners. Strong, proven, heavy. However, the N52 uses a composite construction, an aluminium inner structure with a magnesium outer shell. This was the first production car engine in history to use a magnesium-aluminium composite block. Why magnesium? Because it's 33% lighter than aluminium. The N52's complete engine tips the scales at just 161 kilograms. That's 10 kilograms lighter than the M54. For reference, that's the weight of a car wheel saved, just from the engine alone. But magnesium has a problem. It corrodes. It reacts with coolant. It's difficult to cast with precision. BMW spent 3 years developing a proprietary casting process to make this work. They had to create entirely new manufacturing techniques that didn't exist before. Was it worth it? Well, from an engineering standpoint, absolutely yes it did. The N52 is the lightest production inline-six BMW has ever made, before or since. Even the modern B58 Turbo 6 is heavier. The M54 used a conventional throttle body to control airflow. Open the throttle plate, more air enters, more power. Simple, but inefficient, because that throttle plate creates pumping losses. The engine wastes energy pushing air past a partially closed plate. The N52 uses Valvetronic, BMW's variable valve lift system. Instead of a throttle plate, the N52 controls airflow by varying how far the intake valves open. Tiny opening at idle, full opening at wide open throttle, infinite variation in between. This eliminates pumping losses entirely. The result? Up to 15% improvement in fuel efficiency at part throttle. That's not a small number. That's the difference between meeting Euro 4 and not meeting Euro 4. But Valvetronic added significant complexity. The system uses an electric motor, an eccentric shaft, intermediate levers, and a sophisticated control unit that adjusts valve lift hundreds of times per second. When it works, it's invisible to the driver. When it doesn't work, it triggers the eccentric shaft sensor failure that N52 owners know and dread. Where the M54 had single VANOS on the intake cam only, the N52 has double VANOS, variable valve timing on both intake and exhaust camshafts. This gives BMW's engineers far more control over the combustion process across the entire RPM range. Combined with Valvetronic, double VANOS allows the N52 to optimize for emissions at low loads, efficiency at cruising speeds, and power at wide open throttle. It's like having 3 different engines in one, each optimized for a different job. So what did all this technology actually deliver? The N52 B30, the 3-litre version, produces 258 horsepower at 6,600 RPM and 228 pound-feet of torque at 2,750 RPM. Compare that to the M54 B30, 228 horsepower and 221 pound-feet. So the N52 makes 30 more horsepower and 7 more pound-feet of torque than the engine it replaced, while being 10 kilograms lighter, while using less fuel, while producing fewer emissions. On paper, this is one of the greatest engine upgrades in BMW's history. The N52 does everything better than the M54 in measurable terms. So why does everyone hate it exactly? Let's address the elephant in the engine bay. Plastic. The N52 uses more plastic components than any BMW engine before it. Plastic valve cover, plastic intake manifold, plastic thermostat housing, plastic water pump impeller, plastic oil filter housing cap. When BMW switched the N52's valve cover from magnesium to plastic in the post-September 2006 revision, they most definitely crossed a line that enthusiasts never forgave. That plastic valve cover warps over time from heat cycles. It cracks, it leaks oil, and when it fails, it's not a $20 gasket like the M54. It's a $300 valve cover plus the gasket. To enthusiasts, plastic on an engine represents one thing: cost cutting. And cost cutting on a BMW engine represents absolute betrayal. The N52 uses an electric water pump instead of a traditional belt-driven unit. In theory, this is better. The pump can operate independently of engine speed, providing optimal cooling at all times. BMW claimed it saved about 2 horsepower in parasitic losses. In practice, the electric water pump became the N52's most notorious failure point. The plastic impeller cracks, the bearings fail, the electronics overheat, and when the water pump fails on a BMW, you don't get a warning. You get steam from your bonnet. On the motorway. Water pumps on the N52 fail with alarming regularity between 60,000 and 100,000 miles. The M54's belt-driven water pump? It lasted the life of the engine in most cases. Pre-2009 N52 engines develop a distinctive ticking noise from the hydraulic valve lifters. It's caused by inadequate oil flow to the lifters, particularly during cold starts. Is it dangerous? No. But does it make your 330i sound like a diesel taxi at every traffic light? Absolutely yes, it does, sadly. And then there's the DIY problem. The M54 was a home mechanic's dream. Everything was accessible. You could do a Vanos rebuild in your driveway with basic tools. The N52 actively discourages home repair. The Valvetronic system requires specialist diagnostic equipment. The eccentric shaft sensor needs precise calibration. Even a simple oil filter change requires removing the plastic housing cap that rounds off if you look at it wrong. For the generation of BMW owners who bonded with their cars by maintaining them, the N52 felt like BMW slamming the door in their face. Okay, so we've heard the prosecution. Now let's hear the defense, because the N52 most certainly deserves one. The N52 won Ward's 10 Best Engines Award in 2006 and 2007. This isn't some internet poll. Ward's is the most respected engine evaluation in the automotive industry. The N52 won. Twice. Back to back. The M54 never won it. Not once. Let that sink in. For all the complaints about plastic and water pumps, the N52's core architecture is remarkably durable. The bottom end, the crank, rods, and bearings, is bulletproof. Owners regularly report 200,000, 250,000, even 300,000 plus kilometers with no major internal engine failures. The failures people complain about, water pumps, valve covers, gaskets, are ancillary components. They're annoying, they're expensive, but they're not engine failures. The actual engine inside all that plastic, it's solid. And here's something the internet won't tell you. The N52 is wonderful to drive. The Valvetronic throttle response is immediate. The power delivery is linear and smooth right to the 7,000 RPM red line. And the sound. The N52 at full chat sounds absolutely glorious. From 4,000 RPM upwards, it sings. And it sings so well. That classic BMW Inline 6 wail that builds to a crescendo at redline, the N52 has it. It's different from the M54, but it's not worse. And here's the fact that should give every N52 hater pause. The N52 is the last naturally aspirated BMW Inline 6 ever made. That thing enthusiasts now pine for, the N52 was the last one to offer it. And while everyone was busy complaining about plastic valve covers, that era was ending, and right in front of them. In 10 years, clean, low-mileage N52-powered BMWs will be collectible. Mark my words. The same pattern that turned the E46 330i from a cheap used car into a $20,000 collector piece will happen to the E90 and E92. Because the N52 is the last one. And people always want what they can't have anymore. The N52 gets hated because it sits in the worst possible position in BMW's history. It's the bridge between old BMW and new BMW. On one side, the M30, the M50, the M52, the M54, cast iron and aluminium. Simple, mechanical. Engines you could understand by looking at them. On the other side, the N54, the N55, the B58. Turbocharged, computer-controlled, more powerful, more efficient, but also more complex, and to many enthusiasts, less soulful. The N52 stands in between. It has the soul of the old sixes, naturally aspirated, high-revving, port-injected. But it has the complexity of the new sixes, Valvetronic, electronic water pump, and of course, plastic, where there used to be metal. It's too complicated for traditionalists, and not powerful enough for the turbo crowd. It satisfies neither camp completely. And that's the tragedy of the N52. It was an extraordinary engineering achievement, built to solve an impossible problem. It saved natural aspiration for one more generation. It won international awards. It's lasted hundreds of thousands of kilometers. But it will always be compared to the M54 before it, and overshadowed by the B58 after it. The N52 didn't fail. It just had the misfortune of being excellent at the exact moment when excellence just wasn't enough. BMW bridges get walked on, but without them, you can't get to the other side. Is the hate justified? No, but it is understandable. Because we don't hate the N52 for what it is. We hate it for what it represents. The moment BMW changed. And that was never the engine's fault. Next time, we're answering a question that every BMW owner eventually asks. Which BMW engine is the most reliable? The answer might surprise you, because it's also the simplest engine BMW ever made. No Vanos, no Valvetronic, no variable valve timing of any kind. Just a cast iron block, a forged crank, and decades of bulletproof service. The engine that proves BMW could build something that lasts forever, when they wanted to. If you want more untold stories about the engines, transmissions, and regulations that shaped automotive history, please do join us and subscribe. Thank you.